Did
and
you just were you gonna tell me you tried to cold turkey it?
I did, I did. I was on over 70 milligrams, and I cold turkeyed methadone. I threw up for 72 days straight. I threw up, like, day 3 withdrawals where I was throwing up. I didn't sleep at
Why
all.
would you ever do that
I
to yourself? Was it the stigma?
Yeah, what happened was my mom, like, had just found out. Like, I tried to use that to get off of pills 'cause, I didn't understand what the difference was. This was before anybody really knew about opiates. I didn't know anything about it, and
You'd
so
have been better just cutting cold turkey off the pills.
now with what I know, it was so bad, and my mom, I remember her looking at me and she's like, "What did I do to fail you? Like, what did I do?" And my mother is the only person I have in this country that, like, has been there, stood by me. This woman has moved mountains. I mean, she came here with like $400 in her pocket and made a life for us. So, like, I could not look her in
Single
the eye
mom?
and she no, at the time I had a stepfather, but yes,
Okay.
for a while. So,
What
but I
said
just
single moms
she
are like
she did that, but when she came here and made a life for herself, she did it on her own. It wasn't until later on. I mean, just imagine coming as a single mother to another country, having
no,
to leave your
I mean, I
child,
can't. I can't.
and, she didn't speak the language, which was crazy. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my mom. She saved my life many times, and so the point I'm trying to make from all this is that, like, she was devastated, she didn't even know, and I remember looking at her and I'm like, "Mom, like, I'm sorry, like, I didn't know," and that moment right there, I was like, "I don't care, like, I don't care how long it takes, I don't care what I have to do," and I just remember that by day 30, I was like, that's the thing that kept me from suicide because, like, I didn't know how long it was gonna last. Now I'm on day 50 and I'm like, "How long does this just been my life now?" Like, where I'm just like, I was convulsing because it was such like,
I
the
don't think I've
electrical
ever heard of
shock.
somebody cutting I've heard of somebody cutting off at, like, 20 and it being a complete nightmare. I've never heard of somebody cutting off at 70.
Yeah,
Never. I mean,
I know.
that the resilience that took, I can't even imagine. Sorry, my leg is, like, cramping. I
Yeah.
literally cannot wow, just
I know. You're the first person to actually recognize what that meant, because I'll tell people and they're like, "Oh, yeah," like, I'm
no,
like, "Oh, yeah."
I'm
uh."
terrified. I'm still on it because 'cause I'm terrified to get off because 'cause I'm, like, too much
Yeah.
of a wimp.
I got an awesome guest for you guys today. This is a subject that actually hits really close to home for me, so I'm really excited to talk to her. Her name is Eliza Foltz, and she is the co-founder and chief growth officer of Pathfinder Recovery. So thank you so much, Eliza, for joining us today. How are you?
I'm great, David, thank you so much for having me. This is also a topic that I feel very passionately about, so super excited for this conversation.
Cool. I'm excited to get into it. So, can you tell us a little bit about what you do and like what your company's about?
Absolutely. So I'm in recovery myself. I'm a person in long-term recovery, as is my husband. Generally not recommended to have two people meet each other in treatment and get together, but I was always a rule breaker. So we did, got pregnant, finally found recovery. But we had both been to I don't know. I'd been to 9 residential programs, a number of other programs. He had been to, I think, 6 residential and a number of other. And we ended up getting in recovery and staying in recovery on an outpatient treatment basis. And that was at a time when really treatment kind of looked one way. So it looked like you went somewhere for detox, then you went somewhere for residential, or maybe they were a combined program, and then you went somewhere for intensive outpatient or partial hospital program, and then you went somewhere else for therapy and psychiatry. So all in all, you'd have really 3 different treatment teams and very little continuity of care. Programs kind of got hip to the the problems with that, and so they started doing everything under one roof. Under one roof meaning like, they would have the same care teams or the same program. So at least there was some continuity of care. But it was still all brick and mortar. And most of it was 12-step based. And I actually got in recovery on medication assisted treatment, which Suboxone, Methadone, naltrexone, Vivitrol, very stigmatized by the 12-step community 20, 30, 40 years ago. Now, not so much. Um, but basically, Pathfinder is the program that I wish that I had had access to. When I was finally ready to get and stay in recovery, I was very motivated. I was pregnant with my husband, and we were very motivated. And so we essentially kind of cobbled together this program that didn't exist. So we both had jobs. That were sort of keeping us somewhat together. I was on MAT, I was on Suboxone, but it was really the jobs that we felt like they made us feel good. There's some self-efficacy with that, that's
Yeah.
really important for clients, and so we wanted to keep those jobs. We had an apartment that we were paying rent at. We felt good about that. We had a dog. So taking us away from all of these things was actually probably going to do more harm than good. And there wasn't a whole lot more I could learn in the 10th program that I hadn't learned in the former 9. So it was, but I had to find a trauma therapist, and I had to find an addiction psychiatrist, and I had to find a family therapist for him and I to do work together. Excuse me, I had to find all of these different pieces, and none of the pieces are really equipped to talk to each other. And then I also had to find, a sober companion to live in my house because it was very clear that I was not gonna be able to just stop using without further accountability. And then I also had to go somewhere else for drug tests. So I'm cobbling together 5 different components, and it takes a very motivated person to do that, and my husband also did that.
It's
And
hard
there was
enough on its own
don't get me
already.
wrong, we had some help, from an addiction psychiatrist who's amazing, but, most clients just don't have that. Oh, and most of it was self-pay, by the way. So very, very, very expensive. If I had not had a family that had resources, I mean, I was a heroin addict, so I was not paying for it myself. Um, and, so that was really challenging, and we wanted to create a program with Pathfinder that was totally virtual, so it didn't matter where you live. Obviously, you have to be licensed in the state, but, it doesn't matter if you live in a really remote part of the state where there's no brick and mortar around, we can still treat as long as you live in that state. If you don't have a car, no problem. If you work a 9 to 5, no problem. We have an intensive outpatient from 6 to 9. We handle the drug testing, we handle the breathalyzing, we can do peer coaching. If you want, you really need the accountability, we can get a sober companion in your house. And we take all commercial insurance, Medicare, and Medicaid. So all the barriers that are that typically prevent people from seeking treatment or getting treatment, we remove them all with Pathfinder, which is sort of
Wow.
the first of its kind. Um, what makes it it's certainly not the first virtual program. It's not the first virtual program to offer at-home detox. I think it's the second. We offer a very medical intensive and supervised at-home detox, which most places won't touch, because but it also just prevents people from getting care.
Yeah.
Um, and then full continuum of care. So at-home detox, right into intensive outpatient, right into outpatient, and whether that looks like, trauma therapy, regular substance use therapy, mental health, psychiatry, medication management, we kind of do it um, all under one roof. So everyone's talking to each other. There's one care team, and insurance is never a reason, or finances is never a reason why somebody can't get treatment. Right now, we don't have insurance. I mean, sorry, we don't have Medicaid in 2 of the states, but that's not for lack of trying. We just need a little bit more time. And our goal is once this model I mean, we just wanna spread into more states because of the 50 million people in America that suffer from substance use disorder, 45 million of them do not get treatment.
Wow.
10% get treatment, and it's because of all the reasons I mentioned, that people live in treatment deserts, don't have cars, can't take time off work, whether it's 7 days for detox, 30, 60, 90. they're too scared that if they leave the house, the wife is gonna leave them, or they will leave with the kids, or they're a doctor, lawyer, pilot, doctor, teacher, police officer, so they want help, but they're too scared to go and kind of be seen by a patient or by somebody they might have arrested, or there's a myriad reasons, and we are trying to solve for all of them.
Wow. I just, I earlier in the segment, I spoke about how this hits close to home, and it does for me personally because I'm also in recovery as well. So hearing you actually speak so openly about it, and not only that, and sharing your story, which is also always amazing, right? Like it helps somebody even on a small level. I just want to commend you for the fact that you actually took this and you really created something that I also wish I could have had because I'm guessing your substance was opiates from what you told me,
Mhm.
and that was the same case for me. And so, you hit the head like exactly on the head, the nail, I should say, because none of this stuff really was available. And the fact that you were able to kind of do all of this together while you had a job and also while managing an addiction, which is just incredibly like hard to do for anybody that kind of knows in the space. I was actually really excited to speak with you because I had my partner who you spoke with previously kind of tell me a little bit about it, and I really think it's so important to kind of like take programs like this and spread it out because the epidemic in America is it's systemic. It's crazy. It
Getting
affects
worse.
so many people. It is. And it's the care is just not there. And the fact that so many people are trying to maintain a job and just even survive, when you're in a situation like that, I'll speak to what I know, which is specifically opiates. It's like you can't stop. Like you can't just like be quit your job and just even do medically unassisted. I know, like you said, some people really might look down on that, but I know that saves my life. Like I
Well, I got sober on methadone, which is probably the most stigmatized substance on earth, and it's like my cause célèbre. I mean, I'm still on methadone, and
Mhm.
I will tell people, and I'll get kind of weird looks sometimes at conferences or whatever, but like I don't care. We're a multiple pathways program. So whether you want to get sober on methadone, or we don't prescribe methadone because that's a special clinic that does that, but we do Suboxone, we do, naltrexone. Like, I don't care what it is. If you wanna I got really into running for a while. That really helped
Me
my
too.
mental health. Like, people get really into working out. People get really into, faith-based, like, Celebrate Recovery. Like, I literally could you could throw turtles birthday parties, and, like, literally, if that was what kept you sober, I don't care. Like, I literally don't care. I
Yeah.
just want you to live a fulfilling life that makes you happy and that's better. And so, there's a lot of opinions on cannabis, and for some people in recovery, cannabis is never gonna work. They're in their head, they associate it too much with substances. Like
Yeah.
cannabis, they're off and running, or it triggers mental health problems. But there's
Mhm.
also a lot of research that suggests that for people with opioid use disorder, cannabis can actually be helpful, especially at the beginning. So I mean, I don't take a stance on it. What I know is that I know so little about recovery, and I'm gonna leave it to the doctors and the clinicians and the experts and the patients who really know about their experience, because the
Yeah.
doctors know what the research is, the clinicians know what the research is, but the patient knows what their experience is.
I think you hit on something that's like so key that I don't think a lot of people realize because, I have my girlfriend has had a whole host of mental health issues on the other end of it, right? Where you deal with things like bipolar and those kinds of things, right? And what we had to kind of go through is a challenge of understanding that when you go to the doctor, you think, oh, I'm speaking to a psychiatrist, like what medicine do I have to take? Or maybe you're stigmatized and you don't want to take medicine, right? Because you had like a bad experience, but it's like you have to almost become like an expert within the medication yourself because only you know how that stuff affects you. And that's so true in this type of field, whether it's psychology or addiction. Like they're the same thing that worked for 1,000 people could not work for you. And it's always changing, So like people go there expecting to be like, yeah, just put me on, whatever works or whatever. But you really have to do your own research. And between you and the doctor, it's more of a partnership. I feel than
Yes.
just
Yes.
so I've seen it. and
Yes, and this is
and
why clients chase our doctor around. In any state he's licensed in, they will find him. So they'll leave treatment, they'll do well for a while. Sometimes if they start to struggle, even if it doesn't look like a relapse, if they start to struggle with mental health, they will find him because he listens, he collaborates, I mean, he cares so much that he'll answer the phone at like 7 a.m. on a Sunday morning. I'm not encourage if you are a patient of ours, I'm not encouraging you to do that call, or if you wanna become a patient of ours, I'm not encouraging you to do that. But he just cares so much, and he listens, and he knows that, like, I think when you think you know everything about any given topic, it's time to retire. Just
Mm,
that's true of anything. That's true of investment banking. It's true of brain surgery. It's true of teaching. It's true of anything. You always have to be open to learning, and you never know who you're gonna learn it from. Yes, 95% of it probably comes from research, but 5% of it's gonna come from your patients if you listen,
uh-huh.
and if you listen to what they're saying and take it into account what they're saying, because there are so many people that just treat the same way. "Oh, we're gonna do you're depressed, Wellbutrin, you're anxious, Lexapro," like, but that doesn't work for everybody, and there's some people get these really gnarly side effects, or it doesn't work at all, and the answer is, "Well, let's up the dose." Again, I'm at the edge of my skis because I'm not a doctor, but I've just heard so many clients come to us, and the reason they love Dr. Hendricks so much is because they say how much he listens, and how
Wow.
unusual that is to have somebody that listens.
It really is.
So, by the way, I was thinking this and I never said it. Congratulations on your recovery. It
Oh,
is not easy. It is
thank you.
certainly one day at a time. I think people don't realize how hard it really is. Um, and so congratulations. That's amazing.
Thank you. And you as well, by the way, because there's one thing to get, recovery and safety, and it's another thing to actually become successful and do a business. And it's a whole nother thing to come back and try to help other people that are going through that problem. The most fulfilling thing you could do is helping other people that are going through the problems that you learn to figure out yourself. And as you know, opiate addiction is easily by far one of the hardest problems situations that could ever face anybody, and I mean, it's up there. So,
When people look down at the state like, it's so stigmatized, but the reality is it could happen to literally anybody. Any
yeah,
one of us is one physical accident, so, I mean, falling off a roof, a car accident, a bad ski accident, whatever it is, and a overzealous pain doctor, or not, maybe not even, but trauma, so you're combining trauma with a prescription, and if you're predisposed, then you're really in trouble.
yeah,
So, because I believe that trauma sits this is just my personal belief, but trauma sits here, and then mental health sits here, and then SUD is at the very top, and that's what we see, and so you kinda mentioned, you alluded to this, but when you take out the substance, then all of the other things have to be dealt with. And that's why our relapse rates are so high, because it's very painful to deal with all of these other things that pop up when the substance is removed. So, mental health in this country is definitely not getting better. I mean, I think we look at the opioid crisis as a way for the media to kind of pat ourselves on the back. Oh, we're doing so well, because the numbers are kind of the same for overdoses, when in reality, the drug stream is incredibly adulterated. It's more dangerous than it's ever been. People are buying bags of cocaine and dying of a fentanyl overdose. I mean, fentanyl is just in everything. I mean, there was a student in high school, or a three sport athlete, got into an Ivy League school early, and actually in this town that I live in. and, bought an Adderall on Snapchat to study for the SATs and almost died of a fentanyl overdose. And he had a family that was very just present, right? Like very present. So they didn't hear from him. They didn't hear anything in his room. And 10 minutes later they went upstairs and he was resuscitated and he was fine. But I mean, that's just like a crazy example because it's a good kid from the suburbs that has done everything right basically his whole life and took one pill to try to get a better score on the SATs to, like, improve the academic average of the Division One team he was committed to, and he almost died. Um,
Wow.
and so, and then with TikTok and just everything, I think Roblox and Minecraft are a complete disaster for kids, and
Oh,
now with 764, I'm not gonna get into it, but if you don't know what it is, you'll be horrified.
oh,
Um,
it's crazy.
and it's just I mean, it's horrible. It's what's affecting our kids, and so, I just it's mind-blowing, and then we have gambling, addiction starting really early. I think that's gonna be a wave that won't be quite as big as the fentanyl crisis, but big. And
Yeah.
then suicide is the highest. I'm sorry. Let me rewind. Gambling
Mhm.
has the highest suicide risk of all of the addictions,
Mhm.
because people just don't think they can dig themselves out of that hole. And so with all of these like horrible mental health things going on, we're only going to see SUD get worse. And so programs like ours are more needed than ever, and we're all just one accident or one trauma away from, we want to look down on people with addiction, but or substance use disorder, but really it's an it is just a maladaptive coping mechanism that works really well for a while until it doesn't.
Oh, for sure,
And
for
I mean,
sure.
it works unbelievably well. Like I thought
Yeah.
I found the solution when I found opioids, and I had
Well,
tried a lot of other drugs, and I think at age 13 or even younger, we knew that there was addictive tendencies for me. Started
mhm,
with food, started with promiscuity, sex and love addiction has also been kind of a concurrent diagnosis. Stems from trauma, also a
mhm,
very stigmatized diagnosis. Porn, intimacy disorders. Porn was not my thing, but it certainly stems from intimacy disorder, was called sex and love, stems from trauma. So you have trauma here causing all these mental health problems, and then addiction just sits at the top. But yet we don't condemn people for depression and anxiety. So why on earth are we condemning people for heroin or crack or whatever their drug of choice is? Because that was working for them until it wasn't. And I promise you, nobody woke up and said, I wanna be a heroin addict. I wanna
yeah,
be an unhoused crack addict. Like, nobody
no.
would ever say that, and I'm using a little bit of stigmatizing language that I probably shouldn't be using.
No, no,
Have
it hits
substance
the point.
use disorder,
Yeah,
but the point is like, nobody would ever choose that, and regardless if we wanna condemn somebody, like, next time I would encourage anybody that listens to this, if you're gonna walk by somebody on the street that is drunk or clearly, has a substance use disorder, like, that's somebody's child. Like,
yeah.
that's somebody's mother. That's somebody's loved one. Like, you have no idea what a person's been through. And then, of course, in addiction, if it gets bad enough, as mine did, and I also talk about, being a sex worker because that's another thing that no women talk about ever, and I just think it's important that we destigmatize some of these things because I most women, almost most women, I'll say most women who have substance use disorder are doing some degree of that, whether they're living with somebody they don't want to be living with, or they're living with the drug dealer and sleeping with the drug dealer, or they're actually doing sex work. That is all part of it. And using during pregnancies, another thing nobody talks about, but it happens. And nobody would ever choose that, ever.
Yeah.
And then unfortunately, then you do things that further kind of stigmatize yourself and traumatize yourself, um, as the addiction sort of worsens. So it's important. Pathfinder was also one thing that makes us unique is because we're so easily accessible and nobody needs to go away from home, we can treat before things completely like the wheels come off the bus, right? So we can treat when somebody is, maybe using crack cocaine or they have just dipped into snorting fentanyl. And I'm not saying like that's minor. Neither of those are minor, but they are not on the street. They've not lost their job. They don't have legal trouble. They haven't lost their kids. Like that's usually when people go to brick and mortar is when the wheels have completely fallen off the bus. We can treat it when it's early enough, in a virtual outpatient basis,
Right.
and give people a real chance so that because once you get down some of those paths, not only are you really traumatizing yourself, but if you lose your kids, there's a lot of de-incentivization that goes into that.
Yeah.
If you've lost your license, your life's a lot harder. It's a lot harder to dig yourself out of that hole if you don't have a roof over your head. So
Jail time.
that was another big piece of Pathfinder.
Well, first of all, I really want to thank you for saying what you said as far as destigmatizing a lot of these things, because one of the hardest things to do, even besides getting clean, is asking for help. And that feeling of loneliness when you feel like it's only me and it could have only happened to somebody bad, you start kind of like compounding that within yourself. And you're like, other people are normal. Like I'm not like them. And, I must be a bad person. And for you to share, your success within life. You're here speaking to me. Obviously, you look great. I don't know how many years you have, but I could tell from talking to you, you have your life together, and I think it's important for people to hear that. That you could have a past like that, and as did I. There was a year that I literally died 5 times, yet I maintained a job, and one of my old jobs that I had actually got promoted during the process, and so I would by night,
That's
I'm
unusual. I'd say that's an
yeah.
unusual story.
Yeah, but it's more just to say that, like, you never know, which I'm happy you brought it up because you don't know what somebody's going through or you don't know how rampant it is, especially when you're in this
No.
world. You see lawyers, I spoke to police officers, people within government, like, a lot of people have addictions that, they might be maintaining them, right? Like, that they're living and they're fine and everything's fine, but they're not fine. And that's why I'm also glad you spoke about the trauma that kind of goes underneath it and how you wouldn't call somebody that's going through depression and anxiety like, a bad person per se. Also, before we move on to that, this kind of has to touch with the subject. You spoke about like now this generation, I think, is going to experience a whole new wave of this, which is why I think it's so much more important because the way serotonin works and your dopamine receptors when like kids are on TikTok all the time. So it's literally training them to have that addictive behavior and to reward it. So when you're dealing with that all the time, have that instant gratification. It could be opiates, it could be marijuana, you could develop a food addiction, and then once you're in it,
Setting
like
the
you said,
stage. All of that it's setting the stage, and
it
so
you're already doing it kind of, with natural opiates. And so people don't really realize it. They think it doesn't touch aspects of their community, but like it's everywhere. And
well, it
there's no
doesn't
way.
go away either, so that's the thing, like,
Yeah.
so it doesn't really go away, so my husband made a joke the other day, so after I got in you say my life looks together. So, about 2 years ago, I started eating a lot of ice cream at night. I had a really stressful job at the time, and then obviously launching Pathfinder is any startup is stressful, right? And I, like, am a glutton for punishment. This is my 3rd startup in a row. So excuse me, and so I ate so much ice cream, I made myself lactose intolerant. Like, I literally, like, cannot eat
You
ice
could do that?
get physically sick. And I said it to my husband last night, and I was like, "I really think I made myself lactose intolerant," and I looked on ChatGPT, it's rare, but it can happen. And his response to me funny is he goes, "Addict's gonna addict." And and so it's like you just have to channel it into something different and better, and, I think service work has a huge component to that, but I'm sure
The
it's something for
channeling.
you, like,
Mhm.
exercise or work or, it's just something productive, service work,
It's
church,
so
whatever.
funny that you said that about the working out, and you said you had running because I literally turned into a fitness coach because it's just like I feel
Not
like all of
unco
us
it's
kinda
not uncommon. Not
you
uncommon.
just it's the same thing.
Yeah.
So, like, what I noticed also is that, like, within that kinda work, it kinda makes you grow, like, whatever field or topic you choose to do, like, there's a lot of growth that's associated with after recovery, and I didn't have the program like this available to me, so, like, I kinda had to do it on my own. And also, before we move on, because you touched on so many things that I don't wanna miss, they're like gems, but you said, other things help addiction. You don't know what kind of other drugs are gonna help you, and I remember having somebody make me try psilocybin. As far as for therapy, I mean, I feel like I need to say that for the people that are going through recovery because, like, that helped the trauma aspect of what I was going through to be able to sit down with. So obviously, not to go to a nightclub and just do whatever. It
No,
depends how you
yeah,
use it, yeah. But
not
I
for
feel
sure,
free, like that.
same with ketamine. I mean, the ketamine, I've heard
Yeah.
magical things like that. I've just heard wonders, and psilocybin. I mean, it makes me a little nervous because it's like it's not in the US, but ayahuasca is I've heard amazing things about too. You have to be really careful because there's, like, a lot of charlatans out there,
Yeah.
but if you are, like, in legitimately, like, with a shaman and there's somebody there to reintegrate after that process, like, I've heard amazing things about that where people that literally were completely hopeless and had been to countless facilities like, they didn't ever have a craving again, and psilocybin, I've heard, wonders about.
Oh,
I did, very like, microdosing ketamine through a doctor, for a little while. I I didn't notice a huge difference, so I stopped doing it,
mm.
but there's other people that have, noticed a massive difference. So, I mean, you're totally right. You're totally right. And I'm really glad that you brought up psilocybin because there's so much new technology and I mean, obvioususly that's a medication, so not technology, but um that are also being kind of created to help surrounding this issue and I think we're just seeing the beginning of virtual exploding. Uh
Before we move on, you said virtual, right? And I know you know that one of the things you said is that you can kind of test things online. Did you say something about breathalyzer to be able to
yeah,
see virtual? Can you speak a little bit about that? Because
yeah.
that sounded so interesting,
Yeah,
please.
so if all of our detox clients get at home detox, it's called withdrawal management. No one knows what the f that is, so we call it at home detox. So the at home detox client gets a welcome kit, which makes it sound like we're sending them like a gift basket. We're not. We're sending them medical equipment. So they get a controlled substance lockbox because there are often narcotics used, and sometimes because the rails haven't completely, like, fallen off, the just haven't fallen off, there's children in the home, and so we wanna be really careful. We also insist for our at-home detox clients that there is a responsible adult figure in the home to the doctor will coach them what to look for, how to dispense medication, things like that. Um, we also will send them if they were born a female, a pregnancy test. We'll send them a blood pressure cuff. We'll send them a pulse oximeter um, for vitals. We will send them a biometric ring, which I can talk about. We
Wow.
also put them all on our app where they enter their biometrics and they get rewarded for doing so, which is a concept in recovery called contingency management. We want clients to
Yep.
enter the biometrics because we want to get them in the habit early. We don't care if we have to give points to do it. It's like basically a little less than $1 for every biometric day they put in. But the reason this is so important is sleep is the biggest predictor of relapse. So if we can get somebody in the habit early on of putting in their biometric data, we can start to sort of predict patterns of like, ooh, maybe this person's not going to relapse, but they're not doing super well. And also no data is data. So if they stop doing it all of a sudden, well, did they relapse? Like, did something happen?
That
It's,
is so
it's
impressive.
fascinating.
Wow.
Heart rate variability too. Massive, massive predictor of depression, of anxiety, obviously of overall health. So we baseline it. So we're looking at baseline and deviations from baseline. We want to see that heart rate variability going up. Obviously, if it goes up too high, everyone's like, "Oh, so you want to see it go really high?" Like, no, that's AFib. That's different. But we want to see it gradually increasing. We know it's not going to increase every day. It's based on stress and the body's ability to respond effectively to stress. Um, so, uh, it's not gonna be linear, but we wanna see we wanna see a general increase from baseline. Um, with sleep, it's a little bit different. There's certain above and below, like, that we don't wanna see, and then it's other based on standard deviations other than that. Um so we generally, and then, the third one that we look for is actually exercise. So we have them enter exercise, and then there's a stress calculation that the app does, not our app, that the Rings app does, that we have them input, as well as a generalized sleep score. Um but really what we're
Um,
looking for again is concrete numbers. So the scores are all calculated differently. Um, we don't even know it's proprietary. We don't even know exactly how it's calculated. But what we're looking for is what's the baseline, what's the change. And then also it's really useful for our doctor in particular in prescribing medications because if somebody in detox is saying, well, this medication isn't the dose isn't effective, the dose isn't effective, the dose isn't effective.
and the heartbeat?
In meds, it will in yeah, we can actually pull heartbeat from, the pulse ox, with oxygen.
Wow.
Um, so there's a lots of different ways to do it, but we want them to wear this ring long after their discharge. So because we have the full continuum of care, we want clients to be with us months, years. Really, a year is the point where the outcomes really increase. Um, so we send them anyway. So we send them a biometric ring. We also will send them a urinary, like urine tox cup, pretty basic technology there. And then we also send them a breathalyzer. So the breathalyzer is facial recognition. And so we know that it's actually them taking the test.
Wow.
And it tracks in an app that they give their peer recovery coach or their counselor access to. We can't make them, but again, no data is data. Like if they're really refusing to do it or they don't wanna do it, well, why like, what's the resistance? Why?
You could
That's
address it early.
usually not a great sign if somebody
True.
doesn't wanna do it. And then for really severe clients that well, not really severe because we don't take on really, really, really severe, but, because it's just too risky for at-home detox. But for clients that are sort of like borderline, those clients, it can sometimes be a required part of the program that they have to do it twice a day. They have to agree to do it twice a day and or randomly.
I don't think I've ever heard of a program that is actually even just logically as effective as yours because there's always somebody trying to cheat and effectively you're really cheating yourself, right? And it's kind of like you have to stay in this level that's very difficult to stay in. Like it might be very difficult for the actual detox part of it, but if a doctor could actually keep track of your symptoms and even know when you yourself won't admit for whatever reason, whether it be trauma or you're going through something you might not even know yourself that you're going through these symptoms for you guys to actually have the technology now like it's so far advanced because I don't even think other medicine like within psychology is really this advanced. I think it's just because of
Technology
the
is
need.
available to all these programs. I should know. I tried to sell biometrics the same well, actually a more advanced software. I just did it in a rudimentary way for my program because I saw how valuable it was for the programs that were doing it. Um,
Yeah.
but it's not that it's not available. Programs just don't want to pay for it typically. If they can't get insurance authorization, like they don't want to pay for it. But what they don't
True.
realize is it's better outcomes. It's better client retention. Our client retention is unbelievable. It's over 80%, and the reason for
Wow.
that is and it's not I'm not saying over 80% of our clients have been saints, like, in the sense that nobody's a saint, I'm not a saint.
Well, it's
Um,
addiction also, so yeah.
I they have we have a few that have relapsed, but they've told us right away because we built infrastructure, and I had nothing to do with this. This is all clinicians and medical staff have built an infrastructure where there's trust. There's no stigma. We catch things early. Like, and also the retention is based on we catch things so early that it's usually before a relapse has happened, or it's like the next morning where the client is there's a saying in AA that a head full of beer and a belly full of head full of AA and a belly full of beer don't mix. And so they're living in that shame. And so we can call them, pick them up off the ground. It's totally fine. Let's talk about what happened. This is not uncommon. Let's do a biopsy on what the event was. And kind of like lift them up because no one there's so few people that do recovery perfectly. I don't know of many people that are one and done, and though that is a major anomaly. And so we know that people are gonna make mistakes. Ideally, every client would have a 100% success rate. It's not realistic, but when you consider that we have an 88% success rate and, an 88% retention rate across all levels of care, and that 85% of clients relapse in the first year across all programs, like, it's pretty amazing. And it's
Yeah.
and we you know, all of this technology came at a cost. Like, I mean, it was very expensive. And so we there with any business in this space, any successful business in behavioral health, there's always a tension between mission and margin. We swung way to the mission side for a while, which gave us a great reputation, which gave us great clients that are very invested. We're not taking any of that away. What we're doing is we're building other service lines so that we can keep treating at that really high level for the outpatient. Excuse me, but we can have, other service lines that sort of can work to, cover some of the deficit that we're essentially losing on those service lines, because we would never take something away that's working as well as it is. So, we're working really, really hard to build in more states, um we're working really hard to because it's a very it's a much smaller margin when you're doing all this technology, that's benefiting clients. So we are working really hard to expand our footprint to get more clients, and also opening intensive outpatient programs in more states, because those are a program that tends to get paid a little bit better, but by insurance for reimbursements. So we can continue to just treat at such a high level because it's working. I mean, the numbers don't lie. It's working.
Yeah, and just with the social issue of how big this is and how much pain this causes, I'm
Right.
like so happy that you guys are taking this program, which is so versatile. Like even me looking back on something, like if I would have known about you guys, I probably wouldn't have even thought of a second chance because I tried everything, and I could just tell because you know how you were saying before that, like, sometimes the patients will tell the doctor kind of what works. And a lot of times with opiate addicts, we get so desperate that I have done easily 15 years of research on cures and opiates and, because you just get desperate, you're so like, you want to get out for so long. Like you said, nobody chooses to be here. You get stuck, and for whatever reason that you tend to go into it. And so to see you guys actually like care, because I've seen the other side of it as well. I've been to programs where it's just very profit based,
Yes.
and
I
it's
didn't
actually
wanna
kind of
directly say that, but yes, I having
yeah,
sold a technology that I knew would save lives and that I knew would improve retention, it was always, "Well, we'll wait till insurance covers it."
you know,
And
yeah.
it was heartbreaking, I mean, and that's essentially why I quit, 'cause why I quit that company, 'cause I just couldn't hear it anymore, and then the programs that did it were widely considered to be the best programs in the country. It's the board and cottage. These are all brick and mortar, but it's the board and cottages, it's the Prospect Hills, it's the guest house program. It's emotion wellness in San Antonio. That's at IOP PHP. But it's there's so few and far between those programs that are so willing to just yes, whatever's best for the client. And I mean it wasn't even terribly expensive. Um but you're right, there's a lot of programs that not only are very profit based, but also they build relapse into their business plan.
Yeah, that's one thing I didn't wanna say also because I seen it. I seen a lot of these places, like, go purely into profit, and you know what I think it is too? I think it's the people that run it don't have the connection to it. Like, it's hard to imagine somebody, like, that's gone through it like you, that knows that level of pain to, like, even consider not doing what's best f for the client, and I could tell that just from everything you've told me, from the innovation that you have, from all the work that's going into it. Like, I think this is easily, I think, the out of all the podcasts that I've had, one of the most important and meaningful ones as far as like getting this out to. There's so many people that I know have, on some level or another, unfortunately dealt with something like this, and unless you have a lot of money and resources, which most of us don't, like, you're never gonna even know this type of program or, you know, solutions exist. And so between it being stigmatized and between the economic barrier, I think what you guys are doing is amazing. And the fact that you're versatile, that you mixed it like with the MAT, because the last time that I got clean, it was through methadone, which people just for some reason they just don't. And I did too. I remember this must have been 8 years ago, I got on MAT program, I got on methadone, and I didn't know what it was, and I
Did
and
you just were you gonna tell me you tried to cold turkey it?
I did. I was on over 70 milligrams or 60 milligrams, and I cold turkeyed methadone, and I threw up for 72 days straight. I threw up, like, day 3 withdrawals where I was throwing up, I didn't sleep at
Why
all.
would you ever do that
I
to yourself? Was it the stigma?
Yeah, what happened was my mom, like, had just found out. Like, I tried to use that to get off of pills, and it was I didn't understand what the difference was. This was before anybody really knew about opiates. I didn't know anything about it, and so
You'd have been better just cutting cold turkey off the pills.
now with what I know, it was so bad, and my mom, I remember her looking at me and she's like, "What did I do to fail you? Like, what did I do?" And my mother is the only person I have in this country that, like, has been there, stood by me. This woman has moved mountains. I mean, she came here with like $400 in her pocket and made a life for us. So, like, I could not look her in
Single
the eye
mom?
and no, at the time I had a stepfather, but yes,
Okay.
for a while. So, but I
Said
just
single moms are like
she did that, but when she came here and made a life for herself, she did it on her own. It wasn't until later on. I mean, just imagine coming as a single mother to another country, having
no,
to leave your
I mean,
child,
I can't.
and, she didn't speak the language, which was crazy. So it like now my mom is beautiful, gorgeous woman. She speaks eloquently. She like works with Chanel and, she's doing makeup and stuff. She's amazing. I couldn't say enough good. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my mom. She saved my life many times. And so the point of I'm trying to make from all this is that, like, she saw that in me and she was devastated. She didn't even No, and I remember looking at her and I'm like, "Mom, like, I'm sorry." Like, like, I didn't know, and that's that moment right there, I was like, "I don't care." Like, I don't care how long it takes. I don't care what I have to do, and I just remember that by day 30, I was like, that's the thing that kept me from suicide because, like, when I didn't know how long it was gonna last. Now I'm on day 50 and I'm like, "How long does this just been my life now?" Like, where I'm just like, I was convulsing because it was such like,
I
the
don't think I've
electrical
ever heard of
shock.
somebody cutting I've heard of somebody cutting off at, like, 20 and it being a complete nightmare. I've never heard of somebody cutting off at 70.
Yeah,
Never. I mean,
I know.
that's the resilience that that took, I can't even imagine. Sorry, my leg is, like, cramping. I
Yeah,
literally cannot wow, just
I know. You're the first person to actually recognize what that meant, because 'cause I'll tell people and they're like, "Oh, yeah," like, I'm
no,
like, "Oh, yeah."
I'm terrified. I'm still on it because 'cause I'm terrified to get off because 'cause I'm, like, too much
Yeah.
of a wimp. My husband my husband got, in recovery on methadone, but he went up to 90, stabilized, and went down, like but it took him, like, 2 years to get off 90. He went down, like, 1 milligram a week or something, and then he took 2 brief breaks. Um my dose is notably higher. Yeah, I don't because yeah,
Well,
so
I'll tell
anyway.
you what, I the second time I did it, I did it slowly down. I didn't go the second time.
Yeah,
But, yeah, I just remember that time specifically, I had so much strength after doing that, that's when I got into running, like, you mentioned that, and I would be one of those people that was running, like, in the winter, like,
yeah.
just with snow, like, it didn't matter, like, I had this energy for life that I couldn't explain to somebody. It was like a new chance, a new beginning, and I felt so grateful to be alive, and
That's the so
it's
people in recovery, the gratitude so there's also a lot of, like, the term, like, dry drunks or people white knuckling it, but most of the people in long-term recovery, the gratitude that they have is, like, second to none. Like, I have I have a great family, but from, like, a gratitude perspective, I mean, I don't even think you can compare, like, the what I feel towards the vast majority of what those around me, including my family, feel because I just, like, I shouldn't be alive, and frankly, like, if I hadn't gotten pregnant when I did, that's a God shot because if I hadn't gotten pregnant when I did, like, I had completely given up. I didn't care. Every time I tried to end my life, I failed. And every time that I didn't try to overdose, I overdosed. Like, it was at the point where it was like
I know.
couldn't win. Um,
Yeah.
and then I got pregnant. And, and if I hadn't gotten pregnant then, there's no way that I would be sitting here. Like, I was so done. I tried for 15 years to get no, 15 years to get sober, and I couldn't do it.
That's literally the same as me, and,
Yeah,
congratulations, by the way, to
thank you.
actually have that be I'm so happy that you don't think that it's those types of things that do it, but sometimes, like, th those things that shake you up, that just make you, like that I know that also took a lot to go from not wanting it to,
I would never
being
recommend that to anybody. Like, when anybody asks me to tell my story in a room, I'm like, let's talk about that." Because I met my husband in treatment. I only got sober because I got pregnant. Like, I'm on methadone. Are you sure this is a story that you want me to tell people? Just because there's so many programs that are 12-step based, and those work for a lot of people, and I would never go into a program and tout, MAT because that's just not the way their program's based. I would also never recommend to somebody, "Oh, get sober." I mean, get pregnant, that's gonna fix it because we know that backfires a lot, and there's a lot of people involved, and it's not even just the kid, it's, like, generations, like, that hurts generations.
Yeah.
Um, so
But I'm glad that it worked out though, for real,
yeah,
because
it
that's such a
it's
beautiful,
a
like,
gnarly
thing.
story, but it worked out really well, so
Yeah.
and now we're just hoping to change a lot of lives, and We're setting up an IOP in Vermont, hopefully within the month. Right now, we're in Connecticut, Vermont, Massachusetts, New Hampshire. Wait, Connecticut, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Vermont, 4 states. IOP in New Hampshire, IOP starting in Vermont. This is again all virtual. And then we obviously have all the outpatient services I mentioned, like the at-home detox and psychiatry, MAT, med management, individual and group therapy, peer recovery coaching, family therapy, etc.
What
Um,
state are you guys based out of?
so Connecticut, but
Oh, wow.
might be changing to Delaware just as we get a bigger footprint.
Mhm.
Um And then we are launching Pennsylvania and Nebraska next. 2 states with huge need.
Yeah,
Huge
yeah,
need not only from a Medicaid perspective, but from a treatment desert perspective, huge gaps, um, etcetera. So,
that's right next door to me, actually. I'm in New Jersey, so
oh, nice. Okay.
exciting. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
that's cool. I
Yeah.
didn't realize Pennsylvania, like but yeah, it makes sense because it's so
Spread
huge that
out.
yeah. Yeah, it's like I can't imagine, but, I love that you share your story very open and honestly, and it shows that you did a lot of work to be, cool with that because I know for me even it was very difficult to just be able to share that in general. There's, like, a lot of shame and guilt and stuff that's associated with it, so I think
Thank you.
everything you're doing is awesome. I couldn't recommend your services enough, and I honestly, I hope and wish you the absolute most success in your business. Can you let everybody know where they can find you?
Yeah, so we are probably easiest to find on our website. Just www.pathfinder-recovery.com. Our admissions line, if you or a loved one is struggling and you just have questions or want to verify insurance or see if you would be a good fit, that number is 888-685-9383. I'm all over LinkedIn. So my name's Eliza Foltz. You can find me, connect with me on LinkedIn. And then we also have social channels. So we have a Facebook and an Instagram, both for Pathfinder Recovery.
Cool. Thank you so much for coming on. I love the conversation. It literally made my day,
Made
and
my day too. I
appreciate it.
love how passionate you are and you're going at it a different way. But when I hear about the exercise, like that actually I think that's like a precursor to Pathfinder even before. So we get people before the wheels fall off the bus. You get people even before the axle starts to be a little shaky. Because I really believe exercise is an incredibly powerful antidepressant. I think it is a I don't really think addiction goes anywhere. I think you just learn to channel it. So if we can channel it into healthier things, I'll give you an example. A lot of people in recovery become ultra marathoners. You may or may not know that.
No, but it
It
makes so much sense.
doesn't surprise you, I'm sure. So what you're doing is probably also saving more lives than you realize.
I appreciate it, and actually one more thing too that I'd like to tell you is I've for some reason I've had you're the 3rd or 4th, founder of a company that I've had on here that in some way or another actually probably more than that, that way more than that now that I think about it, 'cause and I'm just thinking just in terms of addiction, but people who have struggled with something insane, very sort of hardship, whether it be bulimia, cancer, loss, divorce, addiction specifically. There was a couple of them, a lot actually, that they then used psychedelics and now like all that drive where you said it's like you always have that addictive thing in you, that is something I've seen time and time again be able to like be channeled into the most healthiest ways ever, and it's almost a superpower. So for anybody out there listening that is like, why am I like this? It's there are ways, and I believe it's honestly it can be a blessing. So
A
you know
complete a complete superpower. If you can harness and get over and get in recovery, I have seen people in recovery launch the most amazing businesses, not even just in recovery, but just, it's wild. It's just like, and my daughter has, mild autism, and I was really worried about her when she's younger, and now I'm like, "This girl's gonna, like, go work for NASA." Like, I mean, it took a lot of work to get her to that point, but it's superpower. So if you are struggling or you have a loved one struggling and they can find recovery, I don't know if it's like they get so into work or the obsession or what it is, but I've seen people just do these wild things, like running 200 miles through the Gobi Desert, for example. Like,
It's like
so
David Goggins. Wow.
all right. Thank
No,
you so much.
no, thank you, Eliza. I had an absolute great time.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.